Hey guys, welcome back to HD Arachnids. Thanks for tuning in. Today we have a very special guest, my buddy's son Gavin. He has a project for his class that he has to do at Horizon Middle School down in Bismarck. So he's going to do an interview with me about tarantulas. He's got some questions for us, so I'm going to answer those to the best of my abilities, and we're going to do kind of a little interview style show today, and then afterwards we'll probably put a couple clips on here and some pictures of tarantulas so his classmates can kind of see one of the tarantulas eating a cricket or something like that, and some pictures of some real pretty ones. So we're going to let Gavin take it away with some questions here.
So the first question is, how often do they molt?
It depends on a few different things. It depends on the temperature that you keep them at, and how much you feed them, and then the actual species of the tarantula itself. Some of them are very slow growers, and they'll only molt like once every couple of years, every 3 years. Like I have a Chilean rose-haired tarantula, and the last time she molted was about 5 or 6 years ago, and then she just molted a couple months ago.
So the second question is, what do they eat?
Most of ours eat crickets, and then they also eat cockroaches, any small invertebrate like superworms or cockroaches or crickets.
Would they eat crickets in the wild then too?
They'll basically, in the wild, they're opportunistic feeders. So they're going to eat basically anything that's smaller than them that comes along, whether or not that's a lizard or another insect or even another tarantula.
Oh, so third question is, how long do they live?
That really depends on the species. There's some that are very short-lived that'll only live, the females generally always live longer than the males. And some of the shorter-lived species, the males are only going to live maybe a year to 18 months, and the females might live 5 or 6 years. But then there's some other species like the Chilean rosehair and, a couple others, the Granostola genus. And they live 30 to 35 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that.
Because Fatty's is like 30, right?
Yeah, she's about 30 years old. I bought her in 1994. She was my very first tarantula, and I think she was 4 or 5 years old at the time, and I still have her today.
Yeah. Do they sleep at all?
Tarantulas don't sleep like people sleep. Like they're not, dreaming about, baby tarantulas or anything like that. They do go into like a resting period, I think, I don't think science has really determined whether or not they actually like sleep like REM style sleep like people sleep, but they do just rest, and they're more nocturnal, so they'll rest during the day and then they come out at night and do their thing.
Yeah. How do you tell if it's a male or a female?
That's a good question. When a tarantula molts, you want to take the molt and you're going to kind of unravel it, and you look at the inside of the abdomen, and if there's what's called spermatozoa, that's the female reproductive parts, and they'll be present there and usually pretty easily visible.
Yeah.
And if those are absent, then you know your tarantula's a male.
How do you breed them?
Breeding tarantulas is not real complicated, but it's not the easiest thing in the world either. You take the male once it matures, and you introduce it to a mature female, and they do this kind of little mating ritual where they'll tap back and forth a little bit, and then the male does his thing. And a lot of the times, if you're not careful, the female tarantula will actually eat the male, so you'll have to kind of intervene, or if he's fast enough, he'll get away on his own.
So how do they eat the male?
Just like they would eat any other, like they would eat a cricket or any other food item. Yeah, the female tarantulas, not all of them, but most of them, after they mate, they tend to just kind of go after the male. And I think, according to what research has been done and all that, what that does is it gives the female kind of an extra nutritional boost, and it makes it so she'll produce better and stronger offspring.
So would you want her to eat him, or?
Not necessarily, no. Especially if it's a pet, if you've got an emotional,
lose.
you'll lose your tarantula.
Yeah. So, how many eggs can be in a sack, like an egg sack?
It really depends on the species of tarantula. There's some that will have a couple thousand eggs in one sack, and then there's others that'll only have just a couple dozen.
Can you house them together?
There's one species that you can house together in what's called a communal setting, and you can have multiple members of that species in there, and they won't go after each other. But generally speaking, tarantulas are kind of cannibalistic. If you put more than one in an enclosure, basically you end up with one big fat tarantula.
Yeah, that would not be good.
No.
Can they hear?
Tarantulas don't hear like people do, or like a cat or a dog does. Like you can't say a tarantula's name and it's gonna recognize or anything like that. They feel vibrations with they have a bunch of hairs on their legs that are called setae, and those hairs will vibrate, through whether somebody's making a noise or a prey item's walking around in front of it, and the tarantula can sense that, but it doesn't hear like you or I hear.
Yeah. How many eyes do they have?
Tarantulas have 8 eyes, generally speaking. They'll have a main pair up front, which they use for forward vision.
Yeah.
And they don't have very good vision, but they can see, well enough to distinguish, prey items and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have 3 other pairs of eyes that are kind of located off to the side. And those eyes aren't, very good for vision. They can just basically distinguish, shadows and light and dark.
Yeah. So where do they come from then?
They come from all over the world. There are species, that are native right here in the United States. They're not up here, in North Dakota or anything like that. Like, I think Colorado is about the furthest north they go, and then all the way down through Mexico, Central America, South America, and then there are quite a few different species from Asia and Africa.
So I know there's some in Australia.
Yep, they do have some species in Australia, and they actually, Australia has one of the coolest species of tarantula. They have what they call the Australian barking spider, or the Australian whistling spider, and it actually makes noise.
Do you have any of those?
I do not have one of those, but I do want to get one.
Are they hard to get?
Not at all, actually. You can
No?
order them online from a number of different, tarantula dealers. It's just kind of basically like ordering something off Amazon. You just go onto a website and you find the species that you want, and you place your order, and you get it. And
So it's
sometimes they're available at the pet shops too, like pet shops here in town. And
So
down
it's
in-
like an Amazon, but for spiders.
Kind of, yeah. And there's a bunch of different retailers out there that do that.
How do you get into getting all these spiders and stuff?
Well, for me, it started when I was just a kid, really. I mean, I was always into keeping bugs in jars and stuff like that, like boys do, and then just kind of blossomed from there as I was a teenager and got my own job and started making money and got a car and stuff like that. I started going out and buying different animals and found out that I really liked tarantulas.
Yeah. How many do you have then?
Right now we have 72, I think. 72, yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
a lot.
There's a lot. This is just some of them right here behind us.
Yeah. What is your goal of having them? Is there a goal to having them, or?
It's not necessarily a goal per se. I mean, yeah, I do want to end up doing some breeding and stuff like that. And, there's different things that I want to do with the hobby. Like, I want to breed certain species, and I want to, have certain species and keep them and stuff like that because I enjoy them. But it's more just a, a personal enjoyment thing.
Yeah,
I really
they look cool.
Yeah, they look cool, and I like to just, it's fascinating to sit and watch them eat and stuff like that.
So this one is, how do you come up with all the names for them?
Well, we actually have named, a lot of people don't name all their tarantulas, especially people who have larger collections.
But you have.
We've actually, we've named all of ours, and we've got some of them named after family members. Like, between me and my wife, we have 5 children, and we have one named after every one of them.
Yeah.
Plus some of our nieces and nephews, and then we named some after, members of rock bands like the Rolling Stones and stuff like that.
So what's Fatty named after?
Fatty is, I don't even remember why we named her Fatty. It was just, that was a long time ago.
Are they all venomous? Poisonous? That's just what.
None of them are actually poisonous.
No?
Because poison is actually something you have to ingest in order for something to be poison. And what a tarantula has is called venom, and it's injected. So they're called venomous.
But are all of them?
All tarantulas do have some degree of venom, although there's basically no recorded cases of anybody dying of a tarantula bite.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the New World species, which are species from America and South America, they have very, not very potent venom at all. They possess a defensive mechanism called urticating hairs, which are these little, itchy hairs that they kind of flick at you, and if they get in your eyes and stuff, it really irritates you. So they have less venom because they don't have to,
So,
and then the Old World species are going to have a much stronger venom because they don't have the urticating hairs, so they rely on their venom as a defensive mechanism.
So, question 11 kind of goes with question 5. Are they expensive at all?
You can spend an awful lot of money on a tarantula, or you can get, your basic beginner species like a curly hair or something like that. It'll probably only cost you $10-15. Now, the shipping costs a little bit of money. If you buy one online, it costs about $50 to $55 to have the stuff shipped.
Are they hard to take care of?
No, they're one of the easiest pets I've ever had to take care of. In general, we feed about once a week, and then we always make sure that the water dishes are full, so we'll check a couple times a week to do that. But they're very easy to take care of. You just, when they eat, they just leave kind of a little ball of dried up, insect parts basically, and you just pick that out of there, and it's real easy.
You kind of just answered this question, but how often do they eat?
We feed ours, most of ours we feed once a week. When they're the really small spiderlings, we'll feed those, probably twice a week, a much smaller meal, of course. And then as they grow, they don't have a metabolism like a mammal or even a
Yeah.
reptile would have. They can go literally months and months without eating, and then some, when they get towards what's called pre-molt, when they're getting ready to shed their skin, they'll actually stop eating and refuse food for quite a while. Like Fatty, she has gone over a year and a half several times without eating.
That'd be hard to do.
Yeah, a year and a half is a long time.
Yeah. How many species are there? There has to be a lot.
There are, I believe, last time I looked, just under 1,000 species of tarantulas that are recognized right now, but there's still a lot more out there.
Yeah.
They're undescribed and haven't been discovered yet, too.
So, how big do they get?
The largest one, which is the Theraphosa blondi or Theraphosa sturmi, will get to be about 12 inches of leg span, which is, the size of an average dinner plate. It's a big tarantula.
So,
And then there's some smaller ones, and a Faunopelma species actually from the United States. The smallest tarantula is only about the size of a quarter when it's fully grown.
wow. Some of my classmates, I didn't write these ones down, but I just remember them. They were wondering, like, can they lose a limb and still live and, like, grow it back?
Yep, they do. When they molt, they'll regenerate their limb, and usually after the injury, the very first molt, they'll regenerate kind of a small, like, gimpy-looking limb.
Because, like, one of my friends asked, can they lose a leg and grow it back?
Yeah, they absolutely can. And like I said, after the first molt, they kind of regenerate like a small, like, gimpy-looking limb, and then the next molt after that, it'll be back brand new, and it looks like nothing happened.
Oh, that's nice of them. And, is there any more? Oh, yeah. How long did it take you to, like, make these enclosures? Like, not like how long does it take to
make just one?
Yeah, like put everything in it and stuff.
It doesn't take very long. Making the enclosure itself, we go buy them, we get a lot of acrylic display cases, and we'll buy those at like Hobby Lobby or, different hobby stores. And all I have to do is just drill some holes in there, and then we just put our substrate in there and, decorate a little bit, and you're good to go.
You guys make your own substrate, right?
Yep, we do.
Yeah. That's all the questions that I have.
All right. All right, guys. Well, that is the end of the interview. So I think after this section here, I'm going to put on a couple of feeding clips, and then maybe cycle through some pictures of some different spiders, and then he's going to be able to use this in his report for school and show it to his classmates. So, hi everybody from Horizon Middle School. I guess that concludes the interview, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.